Imagine for a moment a man walking along dusty roads. Close-up, dust kicking up at sunrise, followers trailing behind on a dusty road. His name is Jesus. He comes from a small town called Nazareth. For years he worked with his hands as a carpenter. He really knew the feel of wood and the weight of a hammer. But then, one day, he put down his tools, because he had a new work to do. A much greater work, actually. God had called him to a special mission. He was to bring a message of hope to a world that, honestly, desperately needed it. So he began to travel. He walked from one village to the next, feet dust-covered. He didn't have a grand palace or a royal army. He just had a powerful message and a heart full of love for every single person he met. His mission was just beginning, and it would change the world forever, one heart at a time. One day, a great crowd followed Jesus up the side of a mountain. The air was fresh and clear. The people settled on the grassy slopes, eager to hear what he had to say. This wasn't a formal synagogue or a grand temple. It was nature's own amphitheater. The sky was the ceiling and the earth was the floor. Jesus sat down, as was the custom for teachers in his day. His disciples gathered close around him. The rest of the crowd leaned in, a sea of faces looking up at him with anticipation. They were hungry for something more than just bread. They were hungry for truth, for meaning, and for a word from God. This moment became known as the Sermon on the Mount. It wasn't a sermon filled with complicated theology or harsh rules. It was a beautiful and profound description of a new way of life, a kingdom manifesto, really. Jesus began to speak, and his words were like cool water to a thirsty soul. He talked about a kingdom that was different from any earthly kingdom. Jesus began his great sermon with a series of surprising statements. They are called the Beatitudes, which means the blessings. These were not blessings for the rich, the powerful, the successful. They were blessings for the ones who felt like they had nothing left. Blessed are the poor in spirit, he began. A blessing for those who recognized their own spiritual poverty, for those who knew they couldn't save themselves and needed God completely. A promise: the kingdom of heaven belonged to the humble and dependent. Blessed are those who mourn. A blessing for the heartbroken, the grieving, those whose tears fall in the night. Jesus promised they would be comforted. Then he said, "Blessed are the meek." For the gentle he promised these quiet souls would inherit the earth. After sharing the Beatitudes, Jesus delved deeper into the heart of his kingdom's laws. He presented a way of living that was far more demanding than simply following external rules. He talked about loving our enemies. This must have shocked his listeners. It was common to love your neighbor, hate your enemy. But Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. This was a radical, countercultural command. He was asking them to do the unthinkable, to show kindness, to pray for the very people who wish them harm. He wanted his followers to reflect the character of God who sends rain on the just and the unjust alike. He taught his followers not to seek revenge. If someone slaps you on the right cheek, turn the other cheek. It was about breaking the cycle of violence and retaliation with a surprising act of peace. The words Jesus spoke on that mountain 2,000 years ago are not just ancient history. They are alive. They are as relevant today, September 13, 2025, as when they were first spoken. His teachings provide a timeless compass for our modern world. In a culture that often celebrates wealth power, Jesus reminds us to bless the poor in spirit. In an age of division conflict, he calls us to be peacemakers, look beyond ourselves, live for something greater. They can change us from the inside out. Think of the simple stories. The Good Samaritan stopped to help a wounded stranger, the prodigal son. Father ran to welcome him home. No matter how far we've strayed, the way back is open. His wisdom lights our path, inspire lives of love that change the world.